Hi, I'm Pam Fox at pamfox.org, and a couple of things in today's video. One is I am going to be doing another free 28-day anti-reflux plant-based challenge in May. And so I will leave, when I'm done, I'm actually streaming live today here on YouTube for the first time, and when I'm done, I will leave the link for that in the comment section below. So again, it's a free 28-day plant-based anti-reflux challenge. So it's for people who want to try a plant-based diet for a month for their GERD, and all of the recipes are adapted with no common trigger foods. So common trigger foods would be tomatoes, onion, garlic, high fructose corn sugar, alcohol, cigarettes. But as far as recipes goes, no chocolate, no sugar, no high-fat foods, no spicy foods, in order to allow the esophagus and the lower esophageal sphincter time to heal. So we're eliminating foods that cause irritation, we're promoting foods that are healing, and giving the tissues time to heal from the damage that is done from reflux. So again, I'll link that in the description box below, but for now, the 5 things that cause GERD. So in this video, I actually just did this video over at Facebook, so this is take 2. Hopefully it'll be even better. But in this video, I'm going to be describing not just what causes GERD, but how, like the connection between why this causes this. Okay, so excuse me, this is my first time doing YouTube Live, so I'm getting notices here about the live. Okay, all right, so number 1 is medications, and I just did, you can scroll back up and see a few weeks ago, I already did an entire video on this, the connection between certain medications and GERD. And so basically, what you need to make sure you understand before we move forward is what GERD is. So GERD is when the valve here where your esophagus meets your stomach, it's the lower esophageal sphincter. When that valve opens up and allows acid to rise up, that's known as reflux. And so the question then becomes, well, why is that valve opening up? Why is it opening up? It's supposed to squeeze tightly and seal the stomach so nothing can come up. Because if those tissues get irritated and burned by the acid, it sets us up for pain, discomfort, and further disease. So then why would that valve not clamp down tightly? So that's what I'm going to be talking about today, is these different mechanisms that can occur that cause that valve to open. So the first one is medications, and there are many medications that are prescribed that are actually, their function within the body is to create relaxation and dilation. So some different examples would be asthma, for example. I've had lifelong asthma. I've taken medications for this, inhalers, bronchodilators, dilators. So these medications cause the airways, the alveoli to relax and to open so that we can breathe, okay? And so those same medications that cause that dilation effect can cause the LES here is smooth muscle tissue. It can contract and it can relax, it can open and it can shut. It needs to open to allow the food to come into the stomach, right? But it needs to then contract and squeeze in order to seal the stomach. And so you need that valve to be good and strong. And if you're taking a drug that causes those relaxations to occur, then you can be in trouble. And there's, go and watch that video. I listed all different types and names of different medications and further resources for you to investigate to see if the medications you're taking could possibly be causing your LES to relax. And I'll give the same disclaimer I gave then. This isn't a reason for you to throw your medications away if you determine, oh, my medication is causing my reflux. You always need to work with your doctor and under supervision in order to get off of your medications. Number 2 is diluted stomach acid. So my very last video, and I haven't uploaded it onto YouTube yet, you can find it on my Facebook page, I need to upload that, but was all about the stomach acid and how there's this common belief among many people that the reason we have heartburn is too much acid, as if our stomach has so much acid in it that it's overflowing and getting up into the esophagus, which is rarely ever the case. And in fact, it's when we have too little stomach acid that then that valve, it detects the presence of strong stomach acid, and it'll really squeeze down tight in order to protect the esophagus in the presence of that strong acid. But also if your stomach acid is diluted, and the way it becomes diluted, one of the most common ways that we actually have control over is if we drink copious amounts of water while we eat. So before, during, and after a meal. Have any of you ever been guilty of this? I have. So I used to drink at least a glass of water with a meal, if not 3 or 4 glasses of water, especially if I was eating out and someone was filling my glass all the time. And I thought this was a really good thing because it's going to soften and kind of dilute and help the food move through quicker. But the truth is actually the opposite. So if you dilute the acid in your stomach and now the food comes in and fills the stomach and all that acid is diluted, that's just going to slow down the digestive process of the food in the stomach, okay? And so now that food is going to sit for longer periods of time, which is going to put you in a likelihood of a byproduct of gas, which is going to cause bloating, and that pressure is going to cause that LES to then open up. Any type of pressure on that LES is going to cause it to not be able to really squeeze down tight and seal. So if you have diluted stomach acid, you actually put yourself at risk for a lot of things. But if it causes slowed digestion, which there are many other things that can cause slowed digestion as well, but certainly inadequate stomach acid is one of them. And you want to be sure and go and watch that video if you're just hearing about this for the first time, because good, strong, adequate stomach acid is vital for your health. In fact, it's one of your immunity's first lines of defense, is that good, strong stomach acid in the gut, in the stomach. The number 3 thing that causes GERD is a hiatal hernia. A hiatal hernia and GERD oftentimes go hand in hand. People with GERD don't always have a hiatal hernia, but they often commonly do. So if you're new to the idea of a hiatal hernia, it is when your stomach, so what you're supposed to have, esophagus, stomach, diaphragm, like that, okay? Your esophagus comes through a hole known as the hiatus in your diaphragm, like that, a little tiny hole like that. It comes through that hole like this. This is what we want, okay? With a hiatal hernia, however, your stomach gets pushed up against your diaphragm, and in the case of a hernia, through the diaphragm, like that, okay? And so this is a very, it's an anatomical anomaly where you literally have an obstruction in your diaphragm, and this anomaly creates many different pressures. One of the pressures is on the diaphragm itself. You have a literal obstruction in your diaphragm, which can cause complications with breathing. You have pressure around your stomach, right? Which is putting pressure on your stomach and causing the tissues to become irritated and possibly inflamed. You have pressure on your nerves. Your stomach is covered in nerves, specifically the vagus nerve, which has vital functions in the body. One is with the nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous and the sympathetic nervous system. It's responsible for partially responsible for digestion. So we have this nerve with many, many important functions, and now it's getting squished, essentially. It can be squished, irritated, agitated, injured, and become overstimulated. So that can cause things like heart palpitations and anxiety and panic attacks with hiatal hernia, just from having a little bit of pressure on that nerve. But specifically for reflux with the hiatal hernia, you've got your LES now, that lower esophageal sphincter, up here. It can be up here, or it can be just kind of like that, not even all the way through. It could just be pressing against the hiatus. And so if we take a look at a beach ball, if you've ever blown one of these up, you know that this valve right here, and this is a one-way valve. When you squeeze it, that's what opens it, right? So you know when you go to blow into it, you either squeeze it or you bite it with your teeth so that you can blow the air in. You've got to put pressure on that valve in order to push that air in easily, right? And so with your LES, if it's now up pushing against your hiatus, that can put pressure on that valve and it can open up a little bit and the acid can escape. Or if it's right up in the chest cavity, now it is under the same pressures that the lungs are under, which means with every breath we take, we have pressure changes. We have high pressure, low pressure, high pressure, low pressure. And that is in relationship to the amount of volume in that chest cavity due to the lungs inflating and deflating. So volume goes up, it goes down, it goes up, it goes down, and so does the pressure. High pressure, low pressure, high pressure. And so then that high pressure, the same high pressure that's on the lungs, is now on this little tiny portion of your stomach that's in your chest cavity. And so you can swallow air when you breathe, when you eat, when you swallow, and that little bit of air is going to build up trapped in this little section, and all of that pressure now pushing on that is going to cause that valve to open up. It could cause acid to rise up. It can cause belching. Okay, so you can have a really, really healthy lifestyle, be eating perfectly, and still have symptoms of hiatal hernia simply because, again, of that anatomical positioning of the stomach being within the diaphragm. And so then if you can get that stomach down and out of that herniated position, that relieves those pressures and relieves those symptoms. And so this is what, if you are new to my channel, this is what I specialize in. I do teach a lot of the mechanisms and protocols that I used to reverse my hiatal hernia naturally, and that are in my online course, Reversing Hiatal Hernia Naturally. And of course, I will also link a link to that below as well. You can follow me here on YouTube and on Facebook. I teach commonly 1 or 2 times a week on this topic for free, or you can buy that course. It's only $67, and then you have everything all in one place. It's just short of 3 hours long, and it's the comprehensive, in-depth way to reverse your hiatal hernia naturally. Okay, so the fourth thing that causes GERD is injury to that LES. Okay, so if something is injured, it's not able to perform its function as well, right? So if you sprain your ankle, you're not going to be able to walk on it or run on it or jump on it as well, right? If you hurt your back, if you hurt your neck, if you hurt your shoulder, you're going to be impaired, right? You're going to be disabled to an extent. And so if your LES is injured, it's not going to be able to do its job. And again, its job is to seal and keep the contents in the stomach. And so then the question becomes, well, how does it get injured? Well, it basically comes down to everything we consume. So smoking is a really, really big one. It's kind of a main culprit in terms of severely injuring the LES. But eating, drinking, medications, things that we consume, remember, all of those go through the LES. So there's exposure of those tissues to everything that we eat and drink. And so if you're eating a lot of junk foods, if you're eating a lot of fatty foods, if you're eating a lot of, starting with just those two, junk foods and fatty foods, long term, over a period of time, the body is always in a process of trying to heal injuries. So it can handle that for a period of time until it reaches its breaking point and it can't keep up with all of that inflammation. Remember, inflammation is the body's natural response to injury. But if we keep injuring, then in time, I've got some questions here. So this is my first time streaming live on YouTube, and now they're gone. I will see if I can get back to those at the end of the stream. But if we keep injuring tissues, they will become inflamed. And if they're inflamed long term, then that's chronic inflammation, and that's bad. That means that the inflammation process, the healing process that the body is trying to provide for you, trying to protect you, can't keep up with that injury. And you're just in a state of inflammation all the time. And remember, tissues cannot function if they're always inflamed. So when it comes to that injury to the LES then, and then we start to have reflux where the acid is then coming up and kind of bathing the area, bathing the LES in acid, then it becomes even more injured. If we're eating a diet that promotes slowed stomach emptying, a lot of bloating, then that puts more pressure on the LES, and especially if it's injured and it's already weakened, and now you're pairing it with bloating, frequent, ongoing, repetitive bloating, you can kind of start to see how you would have reflux. And so then I'll give one more plug for my challenge in May. That's what we're going to be focusing on, is eating foods that promote healing and getting the foods out that promote injury for 1 month to give that time to heal. And then, ideally, if you really jump into this challenge wholeheartedly and really give it your all, you're more likely to really experience results that you hadn't expected. That was my case anyway, and that's the case of a lot of people who go on a really strict whole foods plant-based diet. And remember, these recipes are even eliminating all common trigger foods for GERD. So some of the recipes are really quite amazing. Some, might be hit or miss. You might go, Pam, you're crazy. This is not very good. But that's the only way you get good at being a cook, eating whole foods is to, or whole plant foods, is to really get in and try it and experiment and practice. But it's a chance. It's a 30-day chance for you to see what a diet like that can do for your body in terms of healing, right? Heal those injured tissues of the esophagus. And if you do get wonderful results, that will empower you and make you more likely to stick with the diet. So that would be great. So that's number 4 is injury to the LES. And number 5 is overcrowding in the abdominal cavity. So that can happen for a number of reasons. Obviously, if you're pregnant, heartburn is a very typical symptom for women who are pregnant. And sometimes pregnancy can even cause a hiatal hernia because of all that pressure that pushes the stomach up, for an extended period of time, and it can push it through. And then just being overweight, especially being obese, all of that overcrowding. Again, in your stomach we have a lot of organs, and they're crowded in there, right? There's just room in there for what's supposed to be in there. And so then you add additional fat, so more fat around the organs. You have an omentum within your abdominal cavity, which is a fat organ, and it will grow as you gain weight and become obese and cause additional overcrowding. And then there is more of the rarity, like things like, inflammation can cause overcrowding. So if you have, intestinal inflammation, gastric inflammation, that can cause overcrowding as well. And then if you have growths or tumors, which can happen, that can cause overcrowding as well. So this overcrowding, then, if you just imagine these organs in your stomach, and now your stomach, it's supposed to be down here, kind of hanging out under your diaphragm, and it just kind of keeps going up, getting pushed from all this crowding, and then it will begin to adhere itself to your diaphragm. So within the abdominal cavity, we have all these adhesions and connections that kind of keep everything in its place. There's a lot of give and take and movement, but everything in its place with these adhesions. And so if your stomach gets pushed up here against your diaphragm long term, it will begin to create connections there, and it will make its new home connected to your diaphragm. Okay. I think that's all I wanted to talk about. So let's see if I can find my comments. Oh, here we go. Found them. Okay. How to know if I have a hiatal hernia? Well, the only way you can know is to get tested. Usually they will do a barium swallow or an endoscopy to determine if you actually have a hiatal hernia. But I mean, if you know all of the symptoms of hiatal hernia and you have a couple of those, 2 or 3 of those, or even 1 of those, then you can make an assumption that you might have a hiatal hernia. But there's no way to really know except through diagnostic testing. Also, if you begin to do some of my practices that naturally reverse a hiatal hernia and you get relief from those symptoms, then that's also an indication that you have a hiatal hernia. Excuse me, there's probably a better way I can look at these comments, but can the LES be healed? Yes. Yeah, and that's the whole point of the challenge I have coming up in May. If it's injured from what you're eating, we're going to change your diet to give it a chance to heal. If it's injured from a hiatal hernia, I'm also going to be talking in great depth about hiatal hernias during that challenge, and I'm going to be sharing all of the information that's in my online course with the people in the group. If your LES is not working because of, you're diluting your stomach acid, we have a lot of control over these things. So there's a lot of things that we can do to promote that healing of the LES. But we've got to get reflux under control, because as long as the acid is coming up, then that area of the esophagus is bathing in that acid, and it can't heal as long as it's bathing in acid. So it's a very comprehensive and holistic effort is what I'm talking about. It's not taking a pill or just doing one thing or this or that. It's comprehensive, okay? And then, is a keto diet recommended to repair a hiatal hernia? I think it's possible. I think a keto diet is possible, but I am not well versed in keto diets. If you're doing a keto diet a keto diet is a high fat diet. And so many experts believe that the LES is weakened in the presence of a lot of fat. Okay? So it's not something that I would personally recommend or try myself. Now, that being said, I'm fascinated by the keto diet, and I'm continually exposing myself to people who are on the keto diet, and I'm very fascinated by some of the things that they have to say about how it's impacted their health, because it really goes against everything that I've learned, and it goes against what I'm learning from the doctors, from my own personal mentors. So I never want to say, no way, Jose, that's impossible. I would never tell anyone that. So really, I don't know the answer to your question. It's not something that I would try for repairing the LES or for repairing a hiatal hernia. Repairing a hiatal hernia, it's an anatomical issue. So it's the presence of your stomach lodged into your diaphragm. And in order to get that down, which is how you reverse it, it's about physically moving the stomach down in order to get it down. And it's also about understanding what pushed it up in the first place. So whether it was bloating or it was straining because of difficulty passing bowel movement, or because it was from chronic coughing or chronic sneezing, all of these things that create additional pressure in the abdominal cavity and push the stomach up. These are the things that we have to understand what they are, understand why they're creating pressure, understand how we can control those things so that we can eliminate those pressures, so that now the stomach's not getting pushed up all the time. So we're doing two things. We're moving the stomach down with our hands through exercise, okay, moving it down, but we're also learning the things that we can eliminate that push it up so that it has a chance to move down and won't get pushed up again. And then the third thing we do to reverse a hiatal hernia is we strengthen and tighten the hiatus, which is the hole that becomes enlarged and dilated that the stomach comes through. It's a muscle, and if we can tighten that, which we can, then when the stomach does have pressure pushing against the diaphragm, it's less likely to reherniate. So that's how we reverse a hiatal hernia. It's not really about diet. The diet is important in terms of relieving constipation, relieving belching, losing weight if you need to reduce that abdominal crowding. So again, it's very comprehensive. Reversing a hiatal hernia is very comprehensive. Okay, so we're getting up to 20 minutes. How many more questions do I have here? Just two more. Where do we sign up for the challenge, and will it give us recipes? Yes, as soon as I'm done here, I will link a link to the Facebook. I will link the link below for you to sign up, and the recipes that will be given to you, and it's all free. And then Marilyn asks, how can you find out what caused your hiatal hernia then? Well, in my course, you can follow me. I share all of this over and over and over if you're following me. But if you just want to pay for my course, I'll link that below as well. I think I list 18 different things that are causes, intragastric pressure causes, so that you can begin to understand and identify, oh yeah, I do that, or oh yeah, that's probably me. Like if you strain every time you pass a bowel movement, the abdominal muscles contract. That it puts pressure in your abdominal cavity, and your stomach does this. It forcefully pushes against your diaphragm. So that's something you have to get under control if you want to reverse your hiatal hernia. So I go through all of those things, all of the things that cause intragastric pressure, so you can begin to build a picture. I need to address this, I need to address this, and I need to address this. It may be one thing, it may be 10 things. You may just be wearing, maybe you wear pantyhose every day, and that little bit of pressure alone. Maybe you have really high stress and you're always just pulling your gut in. That's a really common one. So it just depends. Everybody's going to be different. You just have to learn. You have to learn what these different forms of intragastric pressure are, identify which ones apply to you, and then start addressing them through lifestyle changes. That's how we reverse a hiatal hernia holistically. All right. You're welcome. Oh, thanks, Marilyn. Okay, well, that was a lot of fun. I should do YouTube Lives more often. It's a lot easier than filming and editing and uploading and all of that. So, okay. So thanks, everyone, for watching, and have a wonderful day. And I don't even know how to turn this thing off. How about hit the X?